that's a good one. I'll plead the fifth.
Okay. Oh, you might have used it too soon. Okay, that's your strategy.
Our guest today is Jackson Fenner. Jackson is running as an independent for Knox County Law Director.
Wait, what in the hell is a law director?
Well, to put it simply, the law director may be the most important person you elect, and most of us have no clue what they do. In Knox County, the law director plays a role in every single aspect of our government. Basically, if there's a chance there could be liability or legal action, the law department weighs in. And as it turns out, that means they touch everything. The county mayor's office, including the budget process, the county commission, the Knox County Board of Education and the superintendent of schools, the Knox County Health Department, the Knox County Sheriff's Office, including prisons, subpoenas, warrant enforcement, and in some cases they can even play a role in which crimes the district attorney will prosecute, the Knox County Library, the various elected fee offices, which cover everything from property taxes to driver's licenses, workers' compensation, beer permits, grants, sidewalks, commercial and residential developments, water quality, air quality, stormwater management, floodplains, building permits, traffic flow, red lights, skateboarding, disposal of surplus property, parks and park facilities, fair bidding, mulching, bicycling, Title IX, background checks. Wow, the list just keeps on going. Recently, the law director has played a huge role in issues like COVID-19 restrictions and mask mandates, the Knox County Schools reopening plans, whether private citizens can request documents of public record from the Knox County Sheriff's Office, and whether the school's central office would be able to relocate to TVA towers. The law director must be licensed to practice law in the state of Tennessee and may serve 2 4-year terms. Oh yeah, and it's important to note that Knox County is one of the only counties in Tennessee where we elect our law director rather than having one appointed, which means we tend to end up with people who get elected because they have an R next to the name on their ballot. So yeah, this office is pretty important.
Hell yeah! Well, now that we've learned all that, let's try this again.
Okay, the first question is, Jackson, if elected, how would you restructure the law director's office? There's currently a serious lack of diversity there, and how would you attempt to address that?
I absolutely agree with you. There's 11 deputies in there, 1 woman. I definitely would bring some more women and diversify the office. The office needs to reflect the community.
A little bit about your views on police reform and how you envision your relationship with the Knox County Sheriff's Office.
Well, it's tricky. You know, I'm totally in tune with what's happening in this country. I know there's a lot of mistrust and with police department all across the country. I was endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, which is I was not expecting that, but perhaps they just see me as a lesser of evils. I'm not sure. I'm not going to tolerate bad police officers. If there's people who are committing misconduct or committing abuse to the citizens, I'm not going to protect them and defend them. And they understood where I was coming from, and that's a view that I have. But at the same time, we have to treat them better too. They are the lowest paid, one of the lowest paid departments. So the sheriffs come in at like $25,000 a year, which I think is just not a living wage. So we need to treat them a little bit better too. There's been a history from Bud Armstrong's administration of just denying every workers' comp claim that comes through the office. They went after their pensions. We might disagree on policy, we might disagree on the law, we might disagree on use of force, but at the end of the day, we still need to treat them well because they're workers and they work for us, and we need to pay them a decent wage. So I think that there has to be some give and take.
Switching gears a little bit, the law director plays a huge role in determining which crimes get prosecuted in Knox County. And we know that there are some criminal charges that disproportionately impact people of color. So how would you address institutional racism and how you approach the crimes that Knox County decides to prosecute?
I can't make the sheriff do anything, I can tell you that, because he's his own elected entity and he doesn't answer to anybody but the voters. I would like to see some changes, but I think a lot of whether or not something is prosecuted, that's going to come out of the DA's office.
What is your philosophy on land development and gentrification? After the death of Breonna Taylor, we've now learned, or her family's lawyers are stating that plans to move citizens out of that area for development purposes played a role in her death. So as Knoxville continues to grow and expand, talk to us a little bit about how you see land development in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas.
Well, a lot of what you're referring to might be more of a city question, but I don't like displacing anybody. I don't like when I don't want corporations, big companies coming in here. And when the Walmart came in on campus, which is now gone, there was all these tax incentives for them to do that, and I'm not in favor of doing that. I'm not in favor of giving big companies or developers these huge tax breaks at the expense of people that are already living there. What I would like to see is I would like to have more community involvement and fewer backroom deals. I want people to have more of a interface with the government and the local government, so people know what is happening, what the plans are. This is going to be my generic answer for almost anything, is that I want people to be able to talk to the law director's office. Right now there's no interface. There's no way for you can't just call Bud Armstrong. There's no point person. I think we need that.
In the role of law director, what can and what would you do to increase funding for mental health and addiction services in the county?
Well, a huge problem, it's a huge problem. I might have been venting on that post. I think in that post, really what I was talking about was, how can you get upset about public health, these proposals for public health, and call it socialism, when you don't care if a police department is publicly funded and they're buying tanks? It's still taxpayer money. I think it can be done. I think that if we can help the people on the front end, then I think that we can save money on the back end. If we had access to some of these folks on the front end before they're charged, before their arrest, I think we'd end up actually saving money. So the money is there. We just need to have more of a preventative approach rather than a rehabilitative approach, because I think that we're wasting money. And then by the time they get through the system, and it's almost too late for a lot of folks, I have sad to say, but most of the people that are on probation, they should, if they had been getting treatment before, maybe they'd be better up. And now they're in the system, and now they end up back in jail most of the time anyway. So I think that there are ways to do it, but I don't think we've had the courage to explore those means.
It seems like the current law director's MO is to settle. He's looking to save money. What's your philosophy on this? What's your outlook as far as what you'd like to get done?
I think it's the opposite. I think that they spend money on litigation when they could settle cases. We had, the pension lawsuit, the perfect example from 2018, when everybody in the case wanted to settle and Bud wanted to keep pushing on and wasted another $1 million of our money. I think that there's an art to it. There's an art to being able to know when to settle, when not to settle. And I think that they've taken a scorched earth approach. I mean, that's the same way it is with the workers' comp cases with the law enforcement officers. Part of the problem is that Bud Armstrong never practiced law before he was the law director. So he doesn't know what it's like to be a lawyer and what it's like to have to handle a caseload. He just comes in with a scorched earth mandate, and that's just the way he's been. And I think it's been more expensive.
It seems like that law director office right now is pretty politicized, and you've stated in the past that you want to take the politics out of law. You stated you're a lawyer, right?
That's right.
How would you propose doing that in a law director office that currently is arguably very politicized?
Well, part of the problem is that the law director's office is a partisan office, which I don't believe that it should be. And I don't believe that any office that requires you to be an attorney should be a political office. So the DA, the public defender, the judges, I think they should all be nonpartisan, because the law is not political, not a Republican or a Democrat. So I don't care what the Republicans think or what the Democrats think. I'm just going to I'm going to look at numbers and facts and figures and science and the law and make a recommendation based on what's in front of me. I'm not going to make recommendations based on the political winds of change. And that's what's happening in this office. And that's why I'm running as independent. It might cost me the election, but I'm just not going to be part of a party.
Does or can the law director play a role in decriminalizing certain crimes?
See, again, that's going to be up to the DA, and it's going to be that's more of like a state General Assembly. But we can say that, so really my number one job is going to be to recommend whether or not the county will have liability if a certain action is taken. If law enforcement wasn't, cracking skulls over pot cases, misdemeanor pot cases, then maybe we'll have fewer incidents of, complaints against police department, and that'd reduce our liability. I think it has to be couched in those types of terms. If they have an objective and they see things one way, there's not going to be a lot I can do about it, but I can at least tell the sheriff, look, if we do this or do that, then we could have more lawsuits.
On that front, is there anything right now that you know of that you would push the DA maybe not to prosecute because of potential liability? And if so, that's probably going to be a political issue of some sort, if it's something like marijuana, kind of a hot button issue. So how do you do that without politicizing the office?
If we were able to funnel some of our budget to more front end prevention as opposed to back end, rehabilitation, I think that we could possibly, cut down on liability, because any time that law enforcement interacts with the civilian, there's a potential for liability. Even if it's the best cop you've ever seen, there's still going to be potential, because something can always go wrong. So, because an arrest by its nature is a violent act. I mean, you're taking somebody and putting them in restraints and putting them in a car against their will and taking them somewhere else. It's a violent act. Even if it's completely justified and completely right, it still gives you exposure. So it could be something as simple as, why don't we have more citations for theft charges and more citations for misdemeanor? Any misdemeanor can be a citation. Why don't we have more, and I'm just kind of throwing that out there, but, there are little things that we can do here and there. As the law director, it's just going to be suggestions. None of it's going to be binding. They can tell me where they want me to go, and I'm sure they will. But, at the end of the day, it's all about what's best for the county.
The law director has a relationship with Knox County Board of Education and the superintendent's office. And I wanted to know how you see that relationship with Knox County schools, and how is that relationship improved with you holding the seat?
Well, it's always tricky with schools because they have their own budget and they have their own money. And they have their own board, and they are empowered to make their own decisions in that way. So it's more difficult, I think, to have any kind of it's harder to incentivize them. In these times, I think that it's critical that there's a good relationship there, because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we politicized the pandemic, and now we have this rush to reopen schools, and there could be some liability there. Again, everything's about, into law directors, about how does this hurt the county financially. So, I think if we open schools now and try to do something too early, then, I think that we could be in some serious trouble. I think by trying my best to take the politics out of that office and just saying, look, this is what the scientists, the experts are saying, this is what we have to do. That's what my influence would try to be, because there's no acceptable number of dead children. As I was talking to my Facebook post with China about this, I mean, is there other actuaries who are counting how many dead kids are acceptable, and making the decision to open schools?
You said, and I quote, "The right to vote is not controversial. We should all it to be easier for people to vote."
Right.
As law director, how do you plan to fight people's right to vote, particularly at a point in time where mail-in votes have become a hot button?
It's not just a hot button. It's the number one thing that people are ripping on me about on Facebook. It's the number one issue that people want to talk about more than anything else, is mail-in voting, and then masks would be maybe a close second. But what happened in Georgia was disgraceful, in my opinion. They pulled all those voting booths all those voting machines out of the system, mostly in neighborhoods of color and neighborhoods with a lot of Democrats in there. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's what what happened. To me, voting is the most important thing we can do. It's how we, it's the only way that we can have a voice in government. Voting and jury duty, that's like the two most important things in our system. So I don't understand the pushback against mail-in votes. I know that there have been some politicians who have said that it can be tainted and it opens it over voter fraud, but the statistics aren't there. I would rather we take the slim chance of having people of maybe one or two bad votes get past the goalie and having mail-in votes, then we have 10,000 people stay home because they don't want to get the coronavirus, or people come and wait in line and they get sick. So this is not a controversial issue. This should not be a political issue. This should not be as contentious as it is. Everybody should be able to vote.
What I'd like to ask you about is if you go back to the Knox County Board of Health meeting that took place on July 1st, and it was where they initiated this mask mandate. And Mayor Jacobs was there, of course, as well as Deputy Law Director Morton was there. And I guess I wanted to ask about, I noticed this very obvious disconnect of Deputy Director Morton's understanding of the fundamental science behind masks. I don't expect everybody there to be a doctor, but I would expect that if you're involved in this process as a whole, you would have some fundamental communication with the CDC, the local Knox County Health Department. And then what astonished me the most was not just Deputy Director Morton's behavior, which was seemingly, his behavior to me wasn't befitting somebody that's a deputy director.
Right. Yeah. Not very professional.
No. But then what really shocked me was Mayor Jacobs's lone vote to say no against a mask mandate that clearly was supported by the science.
Right.
And so I guess what my question for you is, given the close relationship between the law office and Mayor Jacobs and I'll just say the mayor, it might not, whoever the county mayor is, how do you, for somebody that says, hey, I put science before, I put science before politics. I don't think he did that. He put politics before science. And so how do you work with people like that? How do you try to balance that relationship so you can get things done, you can be productive, you can represent these people doing your job,
right?
Still have a productive relationship?
Well, I expected more from Deputy Morton. He's a trial lawyer. That's where he came from. He does trial work, and any lawyer that does trial work, litigation, has to rely on their experts. If it's a car crash, I can't go up there and talk about the tire tracks and talk about the skid marks. I need to get the scientist up there to tell the jury what the skid marks mean. And in litigation, in many situations, whether it's you have dueling therapists talking about where the child should live, whether you have dueling accident reconstructionists, whether in a civil case, or whether you have dueling, ballistics experts in a criminal case, it's always about science, the criminal or experts. I'm a lawyer. I've tried cases. I've been practicing for 9 years, and you have to listen to what the experts say, because if we are sued because we're not following what the board says, and then we have a bunch of people who get sick and die because we refuse to listen to what the medical experts say, guess what's going to happen? We're going to have a lawsuit, and then we're going to have scientists and doctors on the stands and in discovery telling us about masks. So it's going to happen anyway. So we need to just listen to them on the front end. The order is lawful. And I'm sorry if you think that it's not, but it is. The charter and state statute, I can cite the TCA codes, I put it on Facebook, give the Board of Health the power to make this order. And the governor has given us the power to make this order. And the state attorney general has also weighed in and said, yes, local health departments can make this order. There's been Supreme Court cases that have said that we can do this.
Thanks very much for
Yes, sir.
answering all our questions. I'm going to send it to Lisa for the rapid fire round.
Okay.
Hey, man,
Uh-oh.
you answered all the really easy questions.
Oh,
so
those are
now
easy?
tough, okay?
Those are the easy ones? Okay.
Those are the easy ones. You're a lawyer, so I'm going to let you plead the fifth one time. In
Okay.
these questions, you can plead the fifth one time. And you
Okay.
got to choose when it comes up. You got to make a decision, work within the parameters of the questions. You ready?
Go ahead.
You sure you're ready?
I mean,
Okay,
sure.
here we go.
Go ahead.
Bob Mueller or Pat Head Summit?
Pat Summit.
The beach or the mountains?
The mountains.
Your favorite flavor of Gatorade?
The white one. The frost.
Okay. Jay-Z or Beyonce?
Jay-Z.
Who's more important, a young voter or an old taxpayer?
A young voter.
Boxers or briefs?
Briefs.
The Cincinnati Reds or Atlanta Braves?
Oh, that's a good one. I'll plead the fifth.
Okay. Oh, you might have used it too soon. Okay, that's your strategy. Bigger parks or more development?
Bigger park.
Bonnaroo or Rhythm and Blues?
What was the first choice?
Bonnaroo.
Oh, Rhythm and Blooms.
All right. Hip hop or country?
Well, that's a toss-up. I'd say hip-hop.
Beer or wine?
Beer.
Well, then that leads to import or domestic.
I like I guess domestic, the craft beer is what I like. So.
Okay. And then you're a UT boy. What's on the third Saturday of October?
That would be Florida.
It's UT Alabama. You missed
Oh,
that.
didn't they change it?
It's always in October.
Okay. Well, I should have known that one. That's
Okay, that's all right.
At least you got the right music festival.
Yes.
Jackson, really appreciate you coming on our show and being our first interviewee. And
Thank you.
thanks for putting yourself out there for such
Yeah.
an important position. I
Yes.
can say, for myself, I've learned a whole bunch about the position of law director doing this research. So
Yeah.
I appreciate getting that education, and I appreciate all being pinned to the wall and having to answer to all.
Right. And I just want to say, I appreciate given the chance to do this. I know that my opponent would never do this because he doesn't do any work at all because he just will sit back and wait for everybody to vote Republican. I've lived here for 22 years. I have 3 kids. They're in public school here. I've chosen to live here. My opponent has only lived here since 2018. He moved here 2 years ago, bought a condo to get this job in Tennessee. I voted in every election in Knox County and in the city when I lived in the city since 2003. The first election he voted in was the 2018 primary. So I'm invested in this community. I live in this community. I care what happens here. And that's why I'm running. And I just hope that the viewers would consider to vote for me on August 6th. People are already voting in the mail-in vote, so it's already started. But I appreciate the time.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackson.
Thanks. Nice talking to y'all.